They say waking up from a coma is like crawling out of deep water, lungs burning, ears ringing, everything slow and foggy. That part's true. What they don't tell you is the real suffocation comes after, when you realize the world didn't pause just because you almost died. The first thing I remember is the beeping. Slow. Steady. Annoying. Like a clock you can't shut off. My eyelids felt glued together, heavy as bricks. When I finally forced them open, the ceiling lights stabbed straight through my skull. I tried to move my hand, my leg, nothing. Panic crept in before I could stop it. Then I heard a voice. Mom? That was my son. Aaron. He sounded nervous. Not relieved. Not happy. Just tense, like a man caught doing something he hoped wouldn't get noticed. I tried to answer him, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. All I managed was a breathy sound that didn't even qualify as a word. A nurse rushed in, pressed buttons, started talking fast, calm but urgent. She told me I'd been unconscious for almost 6 months. 6 months. My brain tried to wrap around that number and failed. 6 months is a lifetime. When they finally stabilized me, when the machines weren't screaming anymore, and the room settled into that sterile hospital quiet, Aaron pulled a chair closer to my bed. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. That's when I knew something was wrong. You raise a child, you learn their tells. Aaron couldn't lie worth a damn when he was little. He still can't. Mom, he said, rubbing his hands together, we didn't think you were gonna wake up. There it was. Not I'm glad you're alive. Not thank God. Just that. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. But I whispered. My voice didn't sound like mine. He nodded, still staring at the floor. Yeah. You did. That pause stretched too long. What happened while I was gone? I asked. That's when he finally looked up. His eyes were red, but not from crying. From stress. Guilt. Fear. Pick your poison. Well, he started, things got complicated. Complicated. That word should have warned me. He explained it in pieces, like dropping crumbs instead of the whole loaf. How my stroke had been bad. How doctors weren't optimistic. How his wife, Brenda, had been handling things. How decisions had to be made. Then he said it. We gave the house to Brenda's parents. Just like that. Casual. Like he was telling me he moved the couch. I felt my heart thud so hard it made the monitors jump. You what? They needed somewhere to stay, he rushed on. And the doctors said. They said I was dying. I snapped, every ounce of strength I had pouring into that question. They said you might not recover. Might? That word echoed. That house, I said slowly, is in my name. I know, he replied, voice cracking. But you weren't conscious. Someone had to decide. Someone. I stared at him, this grown man I raised on ramen nights and garage sale clothes, and I realized something cold and sharp. He didn't protect my life while I was unconscious. He managed my exit. And where am I supposed to go now? I asked. That's when Brenda finally spoke up. She'd been standing near the window the whole time, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than concerned. Well, she said, you can't exactly move back in there. I turned my head toward her, slow, deliberate. Why not? Because it's settled now, she replied. My parents live there. All their stuff is moved in. It wouldn't be healthy to disrupt them. Healthy. I almost laughed, but it came out as a cough. So let me get this straight, I said. I survive a coma, wake up fighting to breathe, and I don't even have a home to go back to. Brenda shrugged. You can find another place. Maybe a senior apartment. Or assisted living. Aaron flinched, but he didn't correct her. That silence told me everything. I stayed in the hospital another 3 days. Physical therapy. Evaluations. Nurses helping me sit up, stand, shuffle a few steps like a baby learning how to walk all over again. Every night, I stared at the ceiling, replaying that conversation. Every beep of the monitor felt like a countdown. When discharge day came, Aaron showed up with my coat. Not my car. Not a plan. Where are we going? I asked. He hesitated. There's a motel not too far. Just for now. Just for now. Funny how temporary always feels permanent when you're the one being pushed aside. I didn't fight him. Not then. My body was too weak, and my heart was still catching up with the betrayal. That night in that motel room, I cried quietly into a pillow that smelled like bleach and old smoke. I wasn't crying because I lost a house. I was crying because my son decided my life was over while I was still breathing. The next morning, I borrowed his car. I just want to see the house, I told him. Just once. He looked uncomfortable, but he handed me the keys. When I pulled up to my street, my hands started shaking. Same address. Same mailbox. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. The front door was a color I'd never chosen. The porch light was different. And through the window, I saw furniture I didn't recognize. I rang the bell. A man I'd never met opened the door, Brenda's father. He looked surprised. Then annoyed. Oh, he said. You're awake. That's when it hit me. They weren't scared I'd come back. They were inconvenienced. And standing there on my own porch, legs weak, heart pounding, I realized something that scared me more than the coma ever did. They didn't just take my house. They erased me. And I wasn't done yet. I stepped inside cautiously, each creak of the floorboards under my feet like a warning. The living room was unfamiliar, bright, modern, sterile. My floral sofa was gone, replaced by a leather monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a showroom. The walls, my walls, the ones I'd painted cream after Michael's dad died, were now a crisp, blinding white. Every corner smelled of newness, not home. I walked toward the kitchen, expecting at least a piece of familiarity. My wooden table, the one I had sanded and painted myself, was gone. In its place was a glass table with metal chairs. The stove, the one where I had cooked thousands of meals for Aaron, was replaced by a shiny new one that mocked me. Even the dishes, my chipped mugs, the ceramic plates with painted flowers, vanished. Everything was new, modern, impersonal. I heard a voice behind me. Where is Mrs. Emily Parker? I turned toward the bedroom. That's when I saw her. Mrs. Sarah, Aaron's mother-in-law, standing in what had once been my son's room. She was thin, probably in her early 60s, with dyed brown hair and pearl earrings. She was folding clothes and stuffing them into suitcases, as if this room had always been hers. Her eyes met mine. Cold. Sharp. Mrs. Parker, she said finally, I didn't think you were going to come back. I did, I said slowly, my voice steady despite the rage clawing at my chest. Michael told us you thought I wouldn't wake up. He was wrong. She went back to folding clothes, hands moving briskly. This is not fair. We didn't have anywhere to go. Michael offered us this house. We did nothing wrong except live here without your permission. Your permission wasn't necessary, I spat, the words tasting like ash. You took advantage of my coma, my illness. This house is mine, only mine. And you knew it. Her face hardened, and she slammed the suitcase shut. Jessica was right about you. Selfish. Completely selfish. Those words hit me like a slap. Selfish, for wanting my life back. For reclaiming my dignity. For not allowing them to profit from my suffering. Her eyes narrowed. Someday, you'll understand what it is to lose everything. Completely alone, Mrs. Parker. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Officer Stevens appeared at the doorway. You have 20 minutes to finish packing. Without a word, Mrs. Sarah gathered her bags. Her eyes avoided mine, but I caught a flicker of hatred before she left. And then I was alone. I walked out to the patio. My apple tree, the The tree I had planted 25 years ago, that I had nurtured, watered, watched bloom and bear fruit, had been mutilated. Its branches were cut back to stumps, stripped bare, naked against the grey sky. "What did you do to it?" I whispered, my voice breaking. Frank, another of Brenda's relatives, shrugged as he carried boxes from the shed. "It was in the way," he said simply. "Too much growth. It needed pruning. Too much growth. My tree, my labor of love, hacked down like it meant nothing." Tears burned my eyes. Half an hour later, they were gone. 4 large suitcases, boxes, trash bags, everything that didn't belong to me was now gone. Officer Stevens handed me the eviction papers, confirming it, the house was mine again. I didn't feel victory. I felt the weight of months lost, of betrayal, of a home that didn't recognize me. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls that smelled of strangers, furniture that wasn't mine. I sat on the patio, staring at the pruned apple tree, and I cried. Not just for the house. Not just for the furniture. But for my son, for the boy who had once hugged me and promised to protect me, now a man who chose his wife over his mother. I cried because I had won the house, but I had lost him. The rain came then, thick and cold, drenching me. And in that storm, I made a promise. I would rebuild. My furniture, my walls, my tree, my life. I would return this house to me. And if Aaron wanted to return to my life, he would have to earn it. Soaked, aching, heart still burning, I got up. I went to the shed where my things had been piled like garbage. My floral sofa, my painted wooden table, my chipped mugs, my ceramic plates, they were all there, waiting. Waiting for me. I took one mug, cleaned it with my sleeve, brewed coffee on the stove I hated, and drank it on the floor. It tasted of home, of resistance, of dignity. And for the first time in months, I knew I was going to be okay. This was the start of reclaiming my life. The next morning, I woke to silence. No clatter of dishes, no voices arguing over nothing, no sense of intrusion. Just my house, finally mine again. My body still ached from the rain-soaked night, my muscles stiff from lying on the concrete patio, but my spirit was alive. I started with small things. The kitchen. That shiny, cold stove that had replaced mine seemed to glare at me, a reminder of what had been taken. I went to the shed and dragged my old stove out, patched and cleaned it, and reconnected it with the plumber's help. Slowly, I brought in my wooden table, mismatched chairs, chipped mugs, and ceramic plates. Each item I placed back felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. The living room came next. My floral sofa, battered but familiar, was the first to return. My wooden coffee table, with burn marks from decades of hot cups, followed. I dusted every piece, wiped down the old lamps, hung my cheap paintings from the flea market, and replaced the cold, impersonal white walls with the warm cream I loved. It wasn't just decoration, it was therapy. Every brush stroke, every layer of paint restored not just the house, but a sense of myself. Hours passed. Sweat ran down my back, paint smeared my hands, but the air smelled like home again. I paused sometimes to look out at my apple tree. Its branches were still bare, cruelly pruned, but I noticed tiny green shoots beginning to push through. A promise of life, even after destruction. The phone rang, startling me. It was Michael. I hadn't seen him since the eviction. A week had passed. My heart tightened as I picked up. "Mom?" His voice sounded fragile, tired. "Michael. How are you?" I asked cautiously. I want to come over. Can I?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. But come alone. And come with honesty." When he arrived, I barely recognized him. Dark circles under his eyes, an unshaven face, wrinkled clothes, he looked like life had finally caught up to him. "Mom," he said, standing in the doorway, taking in the sight of my half-restored living room. You're fixing everything." "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm returning my home to me." He stepped inside slowly, almost reverently, as if entering sacred ground. I'm sorry," he whispered. "Do you feel sorry because it was wrong, or because you got caught? I asked, fixing him with my gaze. He stayed silent. I could see the shame in his eyes. I dropped the criminal charges, I said. You're not going to jail, Michael. But that doesn't mean there are no consequences. He looked shocked, a mix of relief and fear flashing across his face. The first, I continued, you never make decisions about my life, my assets, or my health without my consent again. Ever? Second, if I become incapacitated again, there will be legal documents naming exactly who has authority, and it is not you. Third, my will has changed. This house, everything I own, will go to charity when I die. You are not inheriting anything. He sank into a chair, stunned, his hands trembling. I'm your son. I don't understand. Understand this, Michael, I said gently, yet firmly. I love you. You are my son. That doesn't mean you get free passes for decisions that hurt me. You need to earn trust. You need to learn that actions have consequences. Tears ran down his face. Mom. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. I'll try to be better. Good, I said softly. That's all I ask. Actions, not words. We spent the rest of the day in silence, painting the walls together. Cream color. Every stroke a reclaiming of our shared space, a rebuilding of connection. And for the first time in months, I felt a cautious hope. Weeks passed. Michael came every 2 weeks, sometimes with pastries, sometimes just to sit with me on the patio, drinking coffee. Slowly, the tension between us eased, replaced by something new, respect, honesty, and cautious trust. One Saturday morning, I asked, how are things with Jessica? He looked down, ashamed. She left. A month ago. She couldn't accept me choosing you over her. I lost her. I felt a pang, but no satisfaction. Instead, understanding. Sometimes, Michael, I said, losing the wrong people is the best thing that can happen. Freedom feels strange at first, but it's real. It's life without compromise of your soul. He nodded, swallowing hard. I feel free, Mom. For the first time, I feel free. I squeezed his hand. Good. That's how it should feel. You deserve someone who loves you as you are, not as they want you to be. From then on, life started to rebuild itself. My home regained its warmth, the apple tree began to sprout leaves and slowly, new fruit would come. Michael found a simpler, humbler job that gave him peace instead of status. I returned to selling pies at the square, not for money, but for the joy of life, of connection, of routine. And in the quiet moments, as I sat on my floral sofa or watered the apple tree, I realized, it wasn't revenge I needed. It wasn't anger that healed me. It was dignity, boundaries, respect, and the courage to reclaim what was mine. The days that followed were slow, deliberate, and full of effort. Each morning, I woke to the quiet of my home and a determination that had not been there before. My body still carried aches from the coma and the rain-soaked night I had spent on the patio, but my heart was healing. I started the day in the kitchen, my old wooden table in front of me. I ran my hand over its worn surface, remembering all the mornings I had shared coffee here, the countless times I had watched Michael do his homework, the laughter and the quiet tears that had flowed over this very table. Each scratch, each faded paint mark, carried a memory, a story, a part of my life reclaimed. I brewed coffee in my old pot, poured it into my chipped mug, and for the first time in months, it tasted like home, like dignity, like victory. After breakfast, I turned my attention to the living room. The floral sofa came first, battered but full of memories. I cleaned it meticulously, vacuumed the cushions, wiped the dust from the frame, and placed it carefully where it had always belonged. Then came the coffee table, the floor lamp with the faded yellow shade, my cheap flea market paintings. Each item was a stitch in the fabric of my life, slowly sewing my home back together. I paused often to look out at the apple tree in the patio. Its branches, still stubs from the brutal pruning, were beginning to bud. Tiny green shoots dared to grow where there had been nothing but emptiness. A promise. A reminder that even after destruction, life finds a way to return. The phone rang. It was Michael. I hadn't seen him since the eviction. A week had passed, and my heart tightened at the sound of his voice. "Mom, can I come over?" I hesitated, then said, "Yes. But come alone, and come honestly." When he arrived, I barely recognized him. Dark circles under his eyes, an unshaven face, clothes wrinkled as if he had forgotten the outside world. He looked fragile, as if life had finally caught up to him. "Mom," he said, stepping inside slowly, as though entering sacred ground. "You're fixing everything." "Yes," I said. "I'm taking back what's mine. And in the process, I'm taking back myself." He swallowed hard. I'm sorry," he said softly. "Do you feel sorry because it was wrong, or because you got caught?" He stayed silent. I could see the shame, the regret, and the guilt wrestling in his eyes. "I dropped the criminal charges," I said. "You're not going to jail. But that doesn't mean there are no consequences. You need to earn back trust, Michael. Actions, not words." He looked stunned. "I understand." I laid down my conditions: no decisions about my life, assets, or health without my consent, clear legal documentation for incapacitation, and my changed will. Everything would go to charity when I died. He sank into a chair, overwhelmed. "You're my son," I said. "But love alone doesn't erase mistakes. You have to grow, learn, and show me you can act responsibly." Tears ran down his face. "I know I screwed up. I'll try to be better." "Good," I said softly. "That's all I ask. And if you fail, there will be consequences. But I believe you can learn from this." We spent hours painting together, the cream color returning to the walls. Every brush stroke was a meditation, a reclaiming of space, a healing of the soul. Our silence was comfortable, peaceful, and for the first time in months, hope stirred in me. Weeks turned into months. Michael visited every 2 weeks, sometimes bringing pastries, sometimes just sitting with me on the patio drinking coffee. Slowly, we rebuilt our bond. It wasn't like before. It would never be like before. But it was real, honest, and grounded in respect. One Saturday, I asked, "How are things with Jessica?" He looked down, ashamed. "She left. A month ago. She couldn't accept me choosing you over her." I felt no joy, no satisfaction, only understanding. Sometimes, losing the wrong people is the best thing that can happen. Freedom feels strange at first, but it's real. It's life without compromise of your soul. He nodded. "I feel free, Mom. For the first time in years, free." I squeezed his hand. "Good. That's how it should feel. You deserve someone who loves you as you are, not as they want you to be." From that moment, life began to feel lighter. My house regained its warmth. My apple tree, once brutally pruned, now had small green leaves that promised fruit in the months to come. I returned to selling pies at the square, not for money, but because it brought me joy, connection, and purpose. And in quiet moments, sitting with my coffee on the patio, I realized, revenge was unnecessary. Anger was a waste of energy. Dignity, boundaries, and respect were my weapons, and they were stronger than anything I could have done in rage. Michael found a humbler, simpler job, one without prestige or flashy titles, but one that gave him peace. He learned to live honestly, to work hard, and to value people for who they were, not what they projected. And me? I discovered that even at 60, after months in a coma, after losing almost everything, I could still reclaim life. I could bake pies, paint walls, plant trees, nurture them, and watch them grow. I could live fully, with joy and dignity, and teach those lessons quietly, by example. Life, I realized, doesn't need revenge to teach lessons. Karma doesn't need my interference. Life itself responds to our choices. And if I could rise again, after everything, anyone could. The apple tree had its first apple. Small, green, barely there. A symbol of survival, growth, and hope. And as I took my cup of coffee, raising it to the sky, I whispered to the winds, to the earth, to the storms and sun alike, I survived. I am alive. And this life, is mine to shape, mine to protect, mine to love. 6 months had passed since I woke from the coma, 6 months of painstakingly rebuilding my life piece by piece. Each day was a small victory, each simple act a declaration that I was back in control. My house, once stripped bare by betrayal, now felt like home again. The cream-colored walls reflected the morning sun, my old furniture stood proudly in place, and the patio had become a sanctuary, crowned by the apple tree, with its tiny green leaves daring to grow after the harsh pruning it had endured. Michael visited every week. Sometimes he brought flowers, sometimes pastries, sometimes just himself. He was quieter now, calmer, stripped of the pretense and arrogance that Jessica had loved. He was learning to be honest, with himself, with me, with the world. I could see it in the way he walked, in the way he carried himself, in the way he hesitated before making decisions he once would have acted on without thought. One Sunday afternoon, as we sat on the patio with mugs of coffee, I asked him gently, "Michael, what are you learning from all this?" He looked at me, eyes reflecting the weight of months of realization. "I'm learning. I was living for everyone else, Jessica, her parents, my job, their approval. I wasn't living for me. And in trying to be someone I wasn't, I lost everything that mattered." I nodded. "Exactly. You don't get a second chance to be someone you're not. But you do get chances to live as who you really are. And that is worth more than any job, any partner, any money." He smiled faintly, a fragile but real smile. "I think I finally understand. I want to rebuild, Mom. Honestly. Slowly. No shortcuts. No pretending." That week, I found myself returning to the little joys I had abandoned. I spent hours baking pies, each one infused with the love and patience that had always been my secret ingredient. I painted the walls of the bedrooms, adding new colors to reflect hope and renewal. I tended to the apple tree, watering it daily, talking to it as if it could understand my words. "Grow strong," I whispered. "We've survived storms. We can survive anything." The neighborhood noticed the change. People who had feared my disappearance, who had mourned my presumed weakness, now greeted me warmly at the square. "Emily. It's so good to see you back," they said. "We heard you were very sick." I smiled, refusing to dwell on the details. "I'm fine now," I said simply. "Life moves on." And it did. Every smile, every nod, every shared piece of news reminded me that life could be gentle, forgiving, and full of small joys. One afternoon, Mrs. Higgins came to visit. She had always been a neighbor I respected, a friend of sorts, and now she seemed more like family. We sat in my kitchen, sipping coffee and watching the sunlight spill across the table. "Emily," she said softly, "I thought I lost you. When you were in the hospital, I feared. I feared the worst. I feared it too," I admitted. "But here we are. Alive. Learning. Growing." She nodded, smiling faintly. "Your son, how is he coping?" "Better. He's learning to live honestly. Slowly, but surely. He understands now what it means to grow." Mrs. Higgins sighed, and I could see relief in her eyes. "It's never too late, is it?" "No," I said. "Never too late to start over. Never too late to choose dignity, boundaries, and respect. Never too late to reclaim your life." In the weeks that followed, Michael found work in a small accounting firm, helping local businesses manage their taxes. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady and honest. He came home calmer, more grounded, and slowly, our relationship found a rhythm. We still had unspoken walls, memories of betrayal that could not be erased, but we had trust in its infancy, fragile, yes, but alive. I also noticed something else, a growing sense of purpose beyond myself. I began sharing my story quietly with women in the neighborhood, people who had faced hardships, betrayals, or losses. I didn't preach, didn't lecture. I simply told them my experience, what I had learned. Boundaries are not betrayal. Forgiveness is not permission. Self-respect is not selfish. Life responds to decisions, not resentment. Young mothers, middle-aged women, and even older women began coming to me, not just for pies, but for guidance, for encouragement, for an example that life could be reclaimed even after devastation. I had become a quiet beacon, a living proof that dignity could withstand storms. One day, a woman came with her child. She looked weary, her eyes rimmed with red, evidence of tears shed earlier that day. She bought 6 pies, and I noticed her hesitation, her fragile smile. "Are you okay?" I asked gently. She nodded quickly. "Yes, just hard days." I handed her the pies. Life is hard. But storms pass. Darkness ends. And the sun always returns. You've survived, and you will survive again. Her eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. "Do you really believe that?" "I do," I said, smiling. "I've lived it." That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, Michael arrived with a small bouquet of wildflowers from the market. We sat on the patio, drinking lemonade, watching the apple tree sway in the gentle breeze. "Mom," he said, looking at the tiny green fruit, "it has an apple." "Yes," I said. "The first one after the pruning." Life survives, grows back stronger. Just like us. We sat in silence for a while, letting the gentle calm of the evening wrap around us. The past was behind us. The future, uncertain but promising, lay ahead. And I realized something essential: life doesn't demand revenge. Life demands resilience, patience, and dignity. And if you protect your heart, your boundaries, and your respect, the universe has a way of balancing itself. That night, I went to bed with a sense of peace I had not felt in years. The stars shone in the sky, the earth smelled of rain, and my heart felt lighter. I had survived betrayal, illness, and loss. I had rebuilt my home, my life, and my sense of self. And I knew, without a doubt, that no storm, no betrayal, no dark day could ever take my dignity again. The mornings had started to feel lighter, warmer, as if the world itself was acknowledging my return. My house hummed with the quiet rhythm of life, coffee brewing, pies cooling on the counter, the soft creak of the wooden floors beneath my feet. The apple tree outside had grown taller, its leaves brushing the sunlit sky, and now bore a single green apple that I watched with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Michael's new job kept him busy during the weekdays. He worked at a small accounting firm, helping local businesses with their taxes. It wasn't a fancy office, it wasn't the life he once dreamed of impressing Jessica with, but he was calmer, more focused, and in a strange way, happier. Sometimes, he would call me midday, a brief message just to check in. "Mom, the morning was crazy, but I survived," he'd say, and I would smile, knowing he was learning to navigate life without the crutches of pretense and approval. But life has a way of testing the lessons we learn, doesn't it? One Friday afternoon, while I was arranging pies at the market stall, a familiar face appeared among the crowd. It was Mrs. Higgins' neighbor, Mrs. Lawson, holding a pile of bills and papers, her brow furrowed with worry. "Emily, I don't know who else to turn to," she said breathlessly. "My husband, he lost his job, and now the bills are piling up. I'm afraid we'll lose the house." I took a deep breath, my mind racing for ways to help. This was my new mission, my purpose, to remind people that even when storms hit, survival is possible, dignity is essential, and help exists if you're willing to accept it. "Come by my house after the market closes," I said, "and we'll figure something out together." Later that evening, Mrs. Lawson arrived, and we sat at my kitchen table surrounded by papers and old receipts. I helped her reorganize her budget, prioritize debts, and even contacted a couple of small community programs that could assist with her bills. She left with a renewed sense of hope, a weight lifted from her shoulders, and I realized how far I had come, not just in reclaiming my own life, but in creating space for others to reclaim theirs too. Meanwhile, Michael faced challenges of his own. His work, though honest and fulfilling, brought him face to face with people who didn't understand his new pace or values. One evening, as we sat on the patio drinking lemonade, he sighed heavily. Mom, some clients are impossible. They expect me to do everything for them for free because I used to be in a big office. They don't understand why I'm charging fairly now. I looked at him, a gentle smile on my face. Michael, you're learning the hardest lesson of all: respect your work, and people will learn to respect you. It doesn't matter what you were before. It matters what you do now and how you do it. He nodded slowly, absorbing my words. I never thought life could be this honest, Mom. No shortcuts, no fake smiles, no pretending. It's terrifying, but freeing. Yes, I said, pouring another cup of coffee. That's what freedom feels like, terrifying, and yet beautiful. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Michael began to thrive. He learned to assert himself with clients, to say no when necessary, and to celebrate small victories. And I continued my life with quiet resilience. The apple tree grew stronger each day, and in its shade, I found solace and inspiration. Its first apple was still small, green, and unripe, but it symbolized growth after trauma, survival after pruning, and beauty after pain. One afternoon, a knock at the door startled me. It was a woman I didn't recognize, early 30s, eyes weary, but determination in her stance. "Hi, I'm looking for Emily Parker," she said. I heard about you from Mrs. Lawson. She said you help people, and I need help." I smiled warmly, inviting her in. She told me about her struggles, her children, her bills, the overwhelming sense of hopelessness. And as I listened, I realized that my story had become a lifeline. Not through money, not through influence, but through experience. I had survived, and now I could teach others that survival was not just possible, it was inevitable if they held on to dignity, patience, and self-respect. That night, after the woman left with a small glimmer of hope in her eyes, I sat alone on the patio under the apple tree. The first apple gleamed faintly in the moonlight. I sipped my coffee slowly, feeling the gentle rhythm of my life settle into place. Michael had returned home, helping me fix a small leak in the roof earlier that day. We had worked in silence, side by side, and it felt natural, honest, comfortable. "Mom," he said softly, looking at the tree, "do you think we'll ever fully trust each other again?" I thought about the years of hurt, the months of betrayal, and the slow rebuilding of respect. "Maybe," I said gently, "maybe not fully. But trust isn't always about perfection. Sometimes it's about showing up, over and over, with honesty and effort. And that's enough." He smiled faintly, and for a moment, I saw the boy he once was, the man he is now, and the promise of the man he could become. Life had tested him, and like the apple tree, he was growing back stronger. As the stars glimmered overhead, I whispered to myself, no revenge. No poison. Just life, growth, and dignity. That's all I need, and all anyone needs. The weeks rolled by like gentle waves, each day a quiet reminder that life moves forward whether we are ready or not. The apple tree in my patio was no longer just a symbol, it had become a living testament to resilience. Its branches, once bare and wounded, now swayed in the breeze, thick with green leaves. One morning, I noticed two small apples peeking through the foliage. I smiled to myself, knowing that healing, just like fruit, takes time, but it always comes. Michael's visits had become a rhythm I treasured. Every Saturday, he arrived early with a small bag of pastries, or a bouquet of wildflowers from the market. Sometimes we painted, sometimes we repaired something broken in the house. And always, we sat together afterward, sharing coffee and quiet conversation, slowly mending the gaps that betrayal had carved between us. One Saturday morning, as we worked on repainting the kitchen shelves, Michael spoke softly, his voice hesitant but sincere. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About my mistakes, about Jessica, about what I did while you were in a coma. I want to be better. I want to truly understand what it means to value people, not just chase appearances or approval." I paused, brush in hand, and looked at him. "Actions, Michael. Words are easy. It's your actions that will show the kind of man you're becoming." He nodded and went back to painting, but I could see the determination in his eyes. Slowly, Quietly, he was learning the lessons life had forced upon him. Meanwhile, the neighborhood began to notice my return, not just to life, but to purpose. People came to my market stall not only for pies, but for advice, encouragement, and sometimes just a listening ear. Young mothers, weary fathers, and even the elderly came to me seeking guidance. I realized that surviving my ordeal had given me a voice, a chance to impact lives in ways I had never imagined. One afternoon, a young woman named Clara came by. She was in her early 30s, carrying a toddler and wearing exhaustion on her face like a second skin. "Mrs. Parker. I heard about you from Mrs. Lawson," she said timidly. I'm at a point where I don't know how to keep going. Life feels impossible right now." I gestured for her to sit. "Life is hard, honey. But it's not permanent. You can rebuild, even if it's piece by piece. Start with one thing, one small step, and build from there. Respect yourself, set boundaries, and don't let anyone steal your dignity. That's the foundation for everything else." Her eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "Do you really think I can?" "I know you can," I said firmly. "Because I did. And if I could do it at 60, after losing almost everything, so can you." That evening, after Clara left with renewed hope, I sat alone under the apple tree, now heavy with small green fruits. I traced the rough bark with my fingers, thinking of the storm, the pruning, and the regrowth. I realized that life isn't about avoiding damage, it's about how you respond after being broken. Michael's progress mirrored my own. His life, stripped of pretense and false approval, had become simpler, but richer. He faced each day with humility, effort, and honesty. His job, though modest, brought him satisfaction. He visited regularly, and our bond, though scarred, was genuine. He was learning that love without respect is nothing, that trust must be earned, and that life's lessons are unforgiving, but fair. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and crimson, Michael sat next to me on the patio. He was quiet for a moment, watching the apple tree sway in the gentle wind. "Mom," he said finally, "I don't know if I can ever repay you for what you've done. For forgiving me another chance. But I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be the kind of man you'd be proud of." I reached out and took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength in it. "Michael, life isn't about repayment. It's about growth. You've already begun, and that's all anyone can ask of you. Keep learning, keep trying, and never forget that respect, your own and others, is the true measure of a person." As night fell, the first full moon illuminated our patio, the apple tree casting long shadows over the concrete floor. I sipped my coffee, breathing in the scent of wet earth and green leaves. For the first time in a long while, I felt complete, not because life had returned to the way it was, but because it had grown into something new, something stronger, something grounded in dignity, respect, and resilience. Life, I realized, was not about revenge. Karma had already done its work. Jessica had moved far away, her life stripped of the comfort she once demanded. Her parents had faced the consequences of their arrogance. Michael had learned hard lessons, and I had reclaimed my life, my home, my peace. But more importantly, I had reclaimed my dignity. And that was priceless. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window, painting golden streaks across my painted wooden table. I sipped my coffee slowly, the steam rising in little swirls, and let myself breathe. 6 months had passed since I woke from the coma, 6 months of slowly piecing together a life that had been torn apart, and I could finally see it clearly. I had survived. Not just survived, I had grown. The apple tree in my patio had transformed. From the bare, brutal pruning that had left it wounded and bare, tiny shoots had grown into strong, leafy branches. And today, for the first time since the storm, it bore a single apple. Small, green, and unassuming, yet full of promise. I touched it gently, remembering the long nights I had cried over what I had lost, my son's betrayal, my house stripped of warmth, my life turned upside down. And yet, here it was, proof that life heals, slowly but surely, if you nurture it with care. Michael had become part of that healing. He visited every week, often bringing pastries or flowers. Sometimes we worked on the house together, fixing leaks, repainting walls, or simply sitting quietly on the patio, drinking coffee and letting the silence speak. Those silences were no longer heavy with tension or fear. They were comfortable, filled with understanding. He had changed, yes, but not just for me. He had changed for himself, for his future, and for the chance to truly become a man who could face the world with integrity. One Saturday, we were painting the living room together. Cream color, my favorite, slowly restoring the warmth of my home. Michael paused and looked at me. Mom. I know I hurt you. I know I can't undo the past. But I want to spend the rest of my life proving I've learned from it. I set my brush down, studying his eyes. They were sincere, heavy with the weight of lessons learned. Michael, actions matter more than words. You've already taken the first step. Keep going. Keep showing that respect, care, and integrity can guide your choices. He nodded, a quiet determination settling over him. I will. Every day. I promise. I smiled softly. Promises are easy. Actions are the true test. Life, in the neighborhood and in my world, had started to bloom anew. People came by my market stall not just for pies, but for advice, for a listening ear, for reassurance that storms pass. Young mothers, weary fathers, even the elderly sought guidance, drawn to a woman who had fought, lost, and rebuilt everything with dignity. I realized then that my story, my survival, was bigger than me. It had become a beacon for others who felt lost, broken, or betrayed. A young woman, Clara, came by one afternoon with her small child. Her eyes were red, and her hands shook slightly. Mrs. Parker, life's been hard. I don't know how to keep going. I handed her a warm pie and gestured for her to sit. Life is hard, yes. But it passes. One step at a time, you rebuild. Protect your dignity, respect yourself, set boundaries. That's how you start to live again. Her eyes brightened faintly. Do you really think I can? I know you can, I said firmly. Because I did. And if I could do it at 60, after losing almost everything, so can you. Michael, too, had learned to appreciate simplicity and honesty. His marriage was over, his career path changed, but he had grown into someone calmer, more genuine, and more grounded. His visits were a joy, not out of obligation, but out of the renewed bond we had nurtured together. He had learned the most important lesson: love without respect is hollow. Trust must be earned, not demanded. And life's lessons, harsh as they may be, are fair when faced with courage. One evening, as twilight painted the patio in shades of amber and silver, Michael and I sat under the apple tree, now flourishing with leaves and fruit. He looked at me thoughtfully. Mom, do you think I can ever fully make up for what I did? I reached out and squeezed his hand. Michael, it's not about making up for the past. It's about how you live now, how you show respect, care, and integrity. You're on that path. Keep walking it. The moon rose over the patio, casting gentle light on the apple tree and our worn, yet loved home. I sipped my coffee and let the cool night air wash over me. For the first time, I felt complete, not because life had returned to the way it was, but because it had grown into something new, something stronger, grounded in dignity, respect, and resilience. Jessica had moved far away, her life changed, her power diminished. Her parents had faced the consequences of their arrogance. Michael had learned lessons the hard way. And I had reclaimed my life, my home, my peace, and most importantly, my dignity. Karma, life, fate, whatever you want to call it, had done its work, and I had done mine. Now, I wake each day knowing that storms come, storms go, but we can endure, heal, and rebuild. I sell my pies at the market, not because I need the money, but because I love it. Because it connects me to life, to people, to purpose. I water my apple tree, tending it carefully, watching it grow stronger each day. And I teach others, quietly, with actions, with presence, with courage, that life can be rebuilt, no matter how broken it feels. Michael helped me one morning fix a leak in the roof. We worked side by side, quietly, our hands covered in grime and paint. When we finished, we sat on the patio and drank lemonade, watching the apple tree sway gently. "Mom," he said, pointing to the single green apple, "it has fruit." "Yes," I said, smiling, "after the brutal pruning, after the storms, it grew back. Stronger, just like us." He looked at me and nodded. "Both of us," he said softly. I nodded back, feeling the full circle of life and healing. And in that moment, I understood, it wasn't about revenge, it wasn't about taking back what was lost, and it wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about reclaiming dignity, setting boundaries, loving wisely, and teaching those lessons by living them. I raise my coffee cup to the sky, to new beginnings, to resilience, to life itself. And I whisper, not to anyone in particular, but to every soul who has been betrayed, broken, or lost. You can rise. You can rebuild. You can reclaim your dignity. And no storm, no betrayal, no darkness can take that away from you. The apple tree bears fruit. Michael grows into a better man. And I, Emily Parker, continue to live, to thrive, to teach by example, proving that it is never too late to start over, to demand respect, and to find peace. And if my story reaches even one woman, even one person who feels powerless, who feels betrayed or broken, I know it has been worth it. Because dignity, resilience, and respect are treasures that no one can steal. And so, my story ends not with rage, not with revenge, but with hope, with life, and with the certainty that after every storm, the sun shines again, and the fruit, like life, returns.